Hello, I'm with Councilor Teresa from Logan City Council, and we'll be talking about the effects and impacts from COVID. So, to start off with, what was your experience like at the beginning of COVID?
So when COVID first hit, I was actually a candidate for Logan City Council. So in the usual process, I'm a really good campaigner, and I've done it for federal and state members. But I wasn't actually able to go out and talk to people because this virus was taking over the world, and all of a sudden we weren't allowed to interact and do different things, and that face-to-face conversation just didn't happen. So it was really weird for me, it was. And then we got elected, and instead of going into the council chambers, we went down to the Logan Entertainment Centre, and we're stuck inside this big building, being inducted and then having our first council meeting, being sworn in. And it was a little bit intimidating, I must say. How about you? A bit intimidating at first?
I didn't have any thoughts on it actually.
Oh, there you go.
I was more focused on my studies than I was about the virus.
Fantastic. Studies are good.
So, what has been the differences between?
Well, then what was it like when what month was the election?
Yeah.
So the election was actually in March, but we didn't officially get elected until the end of April, and we didn't get sworn in until June. So it was a big gap between. Normally you would have a decision on the night where they counted up all the votes, but because of COVID, they actually had to have a process where it was so disconnected, and you had to have them all shuffled up there, only so many people in a room, and it was so slow. The counting was so slow. I think it was one of the most painful elections I've been through. I've been through some cliffhangers, and this one was painful.
So then was we in lockdown at that time?
That's what I was trying to figure out.
We weren't in lockdown, but what had happened was the Electoral Commission of Queensland had restricted people's movements in and around the polling booths. So at the start we were able to stand there and hand out our how to vote cards and talk to people about our policies, our ideas. And then that last week and a bit of the election, it was really restricted. Lockdown wasn't in place. People were able to come and vote. A lot of people were too afraid to vote. So the number of non-voting people in that local government election was actually higher than normal. And I think it was because they were afraid to come out. We had all the hand sanitizers and what have you, but yeah, it was a strange time, and people didn't know what it was, but they just knew that they had to be careful, which was a good thing, I think.
And did they have higher than usual the postal votes? Because people didn't want to come in person.
They did. The Electoral Commission was completely overwhelmed by the number of postal vote applications. And for those people that, we've got nonnas and poppers that are not internet savvy, and for them it was really tough for them to try and be active and actually have their democratic vote. The Electoral Commission worked as hard as they could, but again, they weren't expecting. They didn't know what was coming next. So it was really it was bizarre, but I got the best result. But, these things happen.
So to ask the next question.
So the lockdowns were all like that prolonged lockdown was finished by the time you became a sworn-in councillor, is it?
Yeah. So a lot of the lockdowns were over when we actually just after the ballot lockdown happened, and it was a short one, and then there was a long one. But we got into this place, this beautiful place where Logan City Council building is a beautiful building. And we felt like we were a bit disconnected, I suppose, because that usual rush of people weren't here. People were working remotely. There were people that we were talking to that we'd never met, and we were asking them to act on local issues. And it's really quite a challenge to say, that street there? And they go, no, councillor, I'm not from that area. And I'm like, okay. But they did their very best. And for some people, they've been out of the workplace for a long period of time. Residents in the community haven't gone back to work since February last year. They're working from home, but they're pretty much isolated because their workspace, the whole idea of a workspace has changed for a lot of people. Would it for you at school? Remote learning during lockdown?
I do online schooling, so it didn't affect me.
Distance education.
I did distance education.
0 for 0, here I am.
That's what was the whole big joke is when I started my online schooling, it was way before, it was what, at the beginning when COVID was starting to be talked about.
Yep.
So for me, when everyone was going to this lockdown, schools are having a heart attack, I'm like, nah, I'm good. I already have my stable education.
Yeah.
Everything's already online for me.
So
So
isn't-
it wasn't a problem.
I always joke last year was really good for her. While everyone else was struggling, you know, the teachers were trying to figure it out, and
You
people
were
were like,
slow and steady and just going
yeah,
through
she
it.
was in a proper organised, you know, class. But then this year, when you know, the kids had the benefits of missing a week or two here or there because of the lockdown, she was like, oh, and I still have to go to class because she's got a proper
There you
one.
go. There's benefits and there's downsides. You know, one of the biggest things about COVID, and I noticed this before I was elected, is that the elderly in the community. I did calls around to people that I knew from the role were by themselves, just to say, are you okay? Do you need your medication picked up? And a lot of them didn't know me from a bar of soap, but they were happy for the contact. Some people have a lot of family who ring them every day, and others don't. So they rely on their community trips, their little community groups to actually be their social outing and be the place where they get to meet and talk to people and feel connected to their community. And when the lockdowns happened, that actually shut that down. And it was really difficult. Learnercraft is down here on a Thursday morning, and they're a beautiful bunch of ladies. But they were so lonely during lockdown. They did their craft, they love craft and they're great at it, but they were lonely. And their weekly outing was gone. The garden club, kids for the crank program, their schoolmates, all of it was impacted, and we've never seen the likes of it. I can't recall a time when you couldn't just go and visit somebody. It was bizarre. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I found was the funny thing was, you know, you're usually busy, you know, doing a million things, and then you're like, okay, great, now I've got all this time on my hands, I can catch up with my friends. Wait, no, I can't, you know.
Well, the biggest part is for those people working from home, one thing I did notice is that it fractured that work-life balance. So you have your family time and then you had your work time. And your work time was defined by the hours that you were in your workspace. And when people started working from home, those lines started to blur, and employers started to expect more flexibility because you were working from home. You must have been having a great old time. You were working just as hard, but employers actually expected you to work some longer hours. Those people that are connected across different nations as part of their workplace, they were then finding themselves turning their start times to those other locations. I've got a good example. Somebody works for a company that has locations in China, Canada, Brazil, India, the Philippines, actually started working on Canadian time because that's where the head office was. And there was an expectation that they would get up at 2 a.m. to take a conference call. Now, before COVID, it was the hours that they were in their office. They're the things, that's some of the big negatives that I think have changed, is that work-family balance separation isn't there as much anymore. Because so many people do work from home or homeschool, or they've just literally changed jobs and are in a whole new place where businesses realise that they don't need all of their staff to come in to get best productivity out of them. So it's, yeah.
I noticed that when I started to get, you know, where you said you'd usually get those emails between 9 and 5 on a Monday to Friday. You'd suddenly Sunday afternoon and Tuesday at 5 a.m. you'd start to getting emails
Friday,
from people.
11:45 p.m.
Yeah.
You think, I should be asleep, but I shouldn't be receiving this.
Yeah.
So it did blur a lot of lines for a lot of people. And I don't know that's positive. Our local football club's just down over there, and they miss their mates. The Logan Roos Soccer Club up at Oates Park, they miss their friends. And it wasn't about, you know, children at that time, it was about the parents going there and being safe. So many groups geared up and actually fed people. So the downturn of incomes had a significant impact. We had the Islamic Council of Queensland, through some of their aid programs, were feeding people. We have the BAPS temple at Kingston. We're feeding students who were stuck here from overseas, our international students, who had no income once the whole hospitality industry sort of shut down, but they were stuck here. They couldn't go home and face potential problems there. They wanted to continue their studies, but they had no income. And that's a real big blow for people. So we had different groups leading the charge on that, as well as our active community groups here, which do food parcels. But again, a lot of them felt, I suppose, a sense of uneasiness about how they should be conducting themselves during those lockdown periods. People are still hungry. They still have to pay the electricity bills. They need that connection. And there are a lot of new people that had never asked for assistance previously who are actually asking for help. These are people that pay their mortgages, they pay their bills on time, they generally have never had a problem, but their livelihoods were basically cut away from them, and they felt the impact pretty badly.
So did the council have to lay off any staff? Or?
Council did not lay off one staff member. We had casual staff that were coming in for events. Some of those were actually redirected to other areas. There were some casual staff that didn't get their hours, but all the permanent and part-time staff, no one was laid off. So that's a big positive that council was able to do, and that's a full credit to the acting CEO, Silvio Trinca. He and his team worked very hard on that. Now, they had to move and swivel on a dime. So previously, where officers would come to work and they'd have their computers in front of them and they'd be working away, we then had to get laptops. Because of the distance between, officers and how many people are allowed in rooms. And council really pushed that to the absolute limit to get that up and running as fast as possible. We still had frontline staff answering the phones. The doors were opening for people who couldn't access, online services and things like that. But again, those people were going through a bit of an uncertain period as well. So it was really bizarre. I think as a community we came through it really well, because our community here in Division 2 is made up of so many giving and caring people. They look out for each other and they look after each other, and it's so important that we recognise those, whether it's your community or whether it's your community groups. We actually look out for each other, and I think 4114 Division 2 came through this pretty well. In fact, I think we actually came through it like stars. So, yeah.
Do you have anything positive that came out, or saw anything positive that happened during COVID?
Yeah, there's lots of positive things that happened during COVID. Some of us got chubbier, some of us got thinner, some of us were able to exercise more. The number of people that actually I'd never seen exercising in the street that were then out because they wanted to leave their house to do something, used that exercise as a reason for getting out. And, there were some people that really greatly benefited physically from COVID. Others not so much. Some of us did spread out a little bit. But there are a lot of positives. As I was calling people, they would say, oh no, Marion from next door's checked on me. Or Isla's done this and she's popped down to the shop. My neighbour's got me covered on my script. So people stood up and asked other people if they were okay. And I am so proud to live in a community that does that. So you ask if there's positives? The positives are that instead of just telling people how good we are, people saw how good we are, how caring we are, and how connected we are. And, we didn't hear horror stories of people being found quite ill without anyone around them checking on them. Number one, because we're nosy, but number two, because we're caring. So that's a real big positive.
I'm sure for those families who's constantly working, they got to use it as a family bonding time.
Yeah. Well, we certainly did a lot of puzzles, and we were very fortunate that we had puzzles at home. Other families got really creative with what they could do, and they actually had to sit down and talk to each other. So it wasn't enough to have, the mobile phones and the games. They actually got to talk and interact with each other, and I think that strengthened a lot of families, and it turned potentially what was those tough teenage years into great bonding times with parents. So you could have discussions around any subject, and you could actually talk and realise that your mum and dad were human beings, number one, amazing. But number two, that you have this set of values, and listening to other people express theirs helps you recognise which way you want to go in the future. And that family bonding time for a lot of kids actually solidified that for them. So it's really interesting.
So you think as much as people were lonely because they were cut off, they also found other ways to like interact and connect, like you said, they started connecting with neighbours and things like that they might not have done before?
Absolutely. I'm the sort of person that'll walk down the street and just go, "G'day, how you going?" I won't know that person from a bar of soap, but I figure if I smile and wave, then maybe I'm the only person that's done that to them that day, or maybe I'm the 10th person that's done it. And I like meeting new people, so of course COVID gave me extra reason to actually get in touch with people to say, "Are you okay?" And I'm fortunate in that I have access to that way in which I can access people that I don't know. But I also went round and I was putting things in letterboxes saying, "Here, have a cup of tea. If you want to chat, here's my number." And I had a few people ring me up and they said, "I got your card today." I said, "Oh, that's really good. What do you want to have a chat about?" They said, "Nothing, but really thank you for the tea bag." So it was pretty awesome. And I had people walk up to me and say, "I've never met you face to face, but I've spoken to you over the phone." That's pretty cool. So yeah, it is what it is.
So is there, I think there's a long-term changes?
What is the ongoing outcome, long-term changes towards operation?
So is anything like, I mean, obviously the way the council did things 2 years ago is different than the way that you have to do it now because of all the restrictions and things. Do you think there's any long-term changes to the way the councils are going to be doing things? Like, are they going to keep these any kind of, I mean, not
the restrictions?
Not necessarily just the restrictions, but just maybe they've learnt some different ways of doing things now from the COVID.
There are plenty of great lessons to be learned from COVID. Desk sharing, not having to have all of your staff on deck. I mean, we were looking at, councils always struggled with fitting their people inside a building. And we've got an expansion of the Animal Management Centre down on Queen's Road. Now, that's not just about the people who work, watching over cats and dogs in the pound. It's actually our graffiti team. It's a bunch of other teams that go in there and can actually coexist in that space, plus work remotely. So they're getting that balance of having people into the office as well as having them working from home. The people working from home are working just as hard, but fortunately for them, council is very clear on what their working hours are. So there's no, let's put a lot onto this person because they're working from home. This is your work schedule, this is what's expected of you. Please complete it to the best of your ability as you would if you were in the office. So many lessons from COVID. Hand sanitizer is important in the world and it's around for a long time to come. Basically job sharing and things like that, how we can better integrate people into different roles. The events team, which potentially would have lost their jobs during COVID, were assimilated into other areas of council. And so what we've got now as a result is a few more all-rounders, which is really positive. So they're not just admin team, they're not just event staff, they're all-rounders in specific areas. And that's really exciting because the more capacity your work team have, the better outcome that you get. Now going forward, what restrictions will be, we've got the state government that's doing some mandates under public health orders. They're actually lawful orders that we all have to follow. We've been asked for some feedback on what we think of some of those, and there was some feedback given, I think it was Monday actually, to the LGAQ on some of the direction. As a local government, we don't have a lot of say when it comes to those public health orders, but we do need to enforce the law, and I think that's really important. There are people who have been vaccinated and there are people who haven't been vaccinated, whether because they have medical restrictions or they object to vaccines. There are choices that people make, and some people are upset with the way things are proceeding. Other people are very comforted by that. I've been double vaccinated, and the reason why I got double vaccinated is I have a vulnerable mother, I have a child who's vulnerable, and I have a community that's full of vulnerable people. So I don't like needles. I didn't want a needle. I didn't want 2 needles. Just to be clear, I did not want them, but I got them because it was the right thing to do for my community. So going forward, I think we're in for some struggles. I think there's going to be people who will feel that they're being hard done by as a result of some of the mandates. And I think that an informed person will make the best decision for their family, their community and their workplace. And I'll leave that up to them. I don't judge them for their choice. I just think that there are choices to be made.
So did you have much to do with the right next door, the whole the COVID vaccine
No,
centre?
goodness no, I had nothing to do with it whatsoever. I didn't have my photo taken. I didn't even get vaccinated there. Did you? The state came to us and said, look, we need a really big facility and that fills the role. We've got all this parking. So we cancelled some of our events, including 2 that I was going to. And it started up, and it's a great facility. It's worked very well. I think combining Queensland Health with our events team, it seemed to flow smoothly. We didn't have as many hiccups as other places, but we weren't a testing facility. It was just a vaccination hub. That'll actually close, I think, end of this year, early next year, and people will be accessing their GPs. So it's been a success in terms of we had people from Brisbane coming. In fact, we didn't care where they came from as long as they were coming. So, yeah, it's been pretty good.
Well, that leads on to my next question. Because of COVID, did you have any major plans ruined?
Yes, I did. So I was actually going to Ireland, Scotland and England for the tattoo, the Edinburgh tattoo. And I was so excited for it. So, of course, COVID hit. That plan went out the window. And then in July this year, I've never seen the snow. I've seen sleet as I've left somewhere, but I've never actually been in the snow. So we planned this trip to New Zealand. And we went down, we got our COVID test, the thing up the nose, down the throat. And we were lined up ready, had everything packed, and New Zealand shut the border. We were literally one day away from leaving. And then I was so upset. I was going to be a snow bunny, sipping hot chocolate and try my hand at snowboarding. So, yeah, just 1 or 2 plans changed.
What about for also the council? Did they have any major plans that was ruined?
Not really. So the thing is, and I've done speeches about this, when COVID hit and we were all in lockdown, our roads crew was still working. The pipes crew that do the water was still working. The people that take care of the sewage plants and what have you were still working. Our teams that do the mowing were still working. Our projects that were going forward were still happening because at that stage the construction crews were actually still able to be there. So they were considered an essential service. So in a lot of ways, council actually probably got a few more things done than what we thought we might, which is really positive.
I'm sure with the no cars on the road and all that, it'd be easier.
It was a lot easier. It was lovely coming to work and not having a traffic jam at all. Yeah, that was pretty cool, I must say that. But that being said, we're a pretty good community and we actually followed what was required of us. There weren't too many people out there, you know, sort of saying, no, I'm not going to follow what you're saying. I'm going to flaunt things in your face. I'm going to put people at risk. And I was really pleased with that. So, yeah.
So are they called Bunnings? Was it Kate? What is it? What's the word for that? You know those? They have. It was in Melbourne. The Bunning. They call it a Bunnings. They have like a Carol.
The Karens.
Yeah, not many Bunnings Karens in Woodridge.
No. Look, in all honesty, I think for the most part people were pretty good. Bunnings was one of the busiest places on the face of the earth. And a lot of our businesses, there's a place up at Underwood called When Harry Met Sally Cafe. And he actually opened up and just had people calling and he would run the coffees out to their cars so that they didn't have to be in contact with him. And he would literally have a tray and just put it inside their window. And he kept his business running. He sort of pivoted as much as he could to ensure that he and his family had an income. The markets were shut down for a period and for some of them, that's their only income. So to go from being very busy and being out there to having no income was really tough. But a lot of businesses, they changed their practices to suit COVID, which was impressive. There was a lot of takeaway meals, and I noticed we had the drone things. The drone things got very busy. Not in my household because I don't deliver there, but the house 4 doors down apparently is within their scope, and twice a day we'd see things getting dropped down to the house. So that's pretty cool. And the online, we always had delivery drivers in the area. Seems like everybody ordered online. So yeah.
I drove one night into the city to drop food to someone who was sick. And that's what I noticed, that the only people on the road were all those Uber Eats and Menulog and all those people, drivers just going around picking up the food.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, it's intriguing to me. McDonald's did great business during COVID, as did KFC and Hungry Jack's. A lot of our restaurants tried their best. For some of them, they just couldn't work around the restrictions, and I understand that. But there are so many back up. If you go up to Croydon Road precinct, there are so many amazing restaurants up there, little shop owners that make these niche foods, and honestly, that's the reason why I am the size I am today, is because of Croydon Road shops, Blackwood Road shops and Station Road shops. No other reason. Not because I failed to exercise, I do occasionally, but it's because of those shops and some of the delicacies in them. There's a bakery on Croydon Road, and you walk in there and he's just got a full thing in front of you, and the drool starts coming out of the corner of your mouth, and shortbreads, everything like that. It's just amazing. I flourished. I blossomed in COVID.
So what was your personal experience for COVID?
I missed talking to my community. I missed the social interactions. I missed debating with people on issues. I love a good debate, and I missed that. I missed being able to just walk past someone and say g'day. Mind you, I met some new people because I live on the back of Karawatha Forest. So I'm there, and these people, all of a sudden, we just had an influx of people deciding to walk in the forest. So we'd be sitting out the back with a cup of tea going, good morning, how are you? And eventually, in the last lockdown, we had a badminton set. And if we were out in the yard, people would walk on the other side, pick up the badminton and go, let's play. So we're actually playing badminton over the forest fence, which is just a chain wire fence. And it was pretty cool. So yeah, something different.
We saw that I'm sure you remember, you came to our Founders Day, and that's where we meet every Sunday afternoon. And so the Scouts stopped when the whole lockdown thing happened, and then semester 2 when it restarted, so they said, okay, you can start doing it again in person if you can implement the rules. And because, ours was outdoors, not in a den like other Scout groups, so we were safe to start straight away. So we turned up on the first day, and we were shocked where usually our deserted Karawatha Forest was packed everywhere, full of people. And I was calling the leaders going, how are we going to do this when we've got like this tiny little corner where we can do our activities in, and that we got shoved into this little corner. But it worked out. By about halfway through the meeting, the people started to disappear. So we were, but yeah, it was about that for the first month, yeah.
And that's just it. Everywhere that was green, where you could exercise or potentially exercise, was busy. Streets were busy. People were walking along streets. It was good. It was
What
good.
about other people's experiences? Did you hear any interesting stories about other people's experience through COVID?
I did. There's one lady that has never sewed a thing in her life who borrowed a sewing machine and attempted to sew. And let's just say that she doesn't sew anymore. The sewing machine was returned, but it was an adventure for her family to watch her, have a crack at something new, because they were so used to seeing her just do one thing. So she actually decided she'd take up different things. There's a young lady that I met down the front here at one of the craft markets. She actually took up sewing, and she started creating the dog bandanas that go around the collar. And she's making a business out of that. So that's her side business. So during COVID, through bandanas and online sales, she's almost saved up enough for her house deposit.
Oh,
That's a pretty good effort, I would say.
I mean, that's definitely one good outcome from,
It is.
especially I've seen definitely through COVID, a lot of online business has been blossoming.
They have. And you know what? Innovators and ideas people always amaze me because they seem to find where there's a gap in a market and they fill it beautifully, but they don't just fill it, they actually rock it. They bring other people along on the journey, and when someone sees someone doing something, they think, I can do something similar. This is an area that has a great little small business incubator space. We've got the Logan Startup Hub up in Borum Park, and what they do is they've got this indoor space and they've created these workspaces within it where people can go if they're a small business and they're too big for their home, but they actually want to attract investors and do things like that. They've created office space for them that they can hire and go and work from. So you don't need to buy a shop front, you don't need big rent overheads and things like that. They created a market for a market.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I've definitely seen a lot of Aussie businesses on my social media. Selling pajamas, bubble tea and all that.
Yeah. You know what? I actually got this. It's called couture cutter. And what it is, it's just, you know how you see those beautifully carved out bits of paper and things like that?
Oh yeah.
It's the machine that does that. So of course I had to buy it. I want this. It's really pretty. And there is so much more to it than what I realised. You actually have to have talent. You have to have style and pizzazz and all of those things, and a bit of an artistic mind. So I'm learning slowly but surely. I got it 3 days ago. I've cut out 4 items and I'm very excited. They're not as good as the ladies who showed me how to do it, but they're good.
That's
So,
good.
yeah.
Anything else?
I mean, just is it any well, I think you asked the other stories from other people.
So pretty much the only message I would have is during COVID, we showed as a community we're kind. We showed that we care, and we showed that people are actually really important to us. And it's not just people that you knew, it was people who were strangers. And I believe Division 2 and Logan City as a whole really came together and we supported people in our community. And if things go south in the future, we know that we've got that grit and that resilience to do it again. And I think that's the most important message we take away. Keep your faith, keep your confidence, keep your generous spirit, and be kind to other people. Everything else in life is just an added bonus.